MARILYN Henderson. MARILYN had lived in the Tacoma-Everett area of Washington during the time when the serial killer was at work. As a teenager, MARILYN did not realize how beautiful and attractive she was. She would go to a malt shop and sit alone by herself, drinking a milkshake and studying during her first year of college. Her self-image was very low, and she did not know that many young men found her highly attractive. MARILYN had been sexually abused as a child. MARILYN's parents did not like or approve of her first husband. MARILYN's parents did not seem to want her around in her adult life. They were very conservative and religious. MARILYN's sister was wealthy and had an expensive home with a swimming pool in the back. MARILYN's sister had a poodle which she had paid $300 for, and which she spent lots of money on having it manicured and shampooed. MARILYN felt that this was an extravagant waste of money when there were lots of people, including herself, who desperately needed such money simply to survive. MARILYN worked with some other women, sometimes at night, cleaning up a restaurant after closing time, vacuuming the carpet, putting the chairs upside down on top of the tables. MARILYN hated the work, and she was once refused a job as a legal secretary, even though she had worked as one for some of the finest attorneys in Dallas, simply because she had answered janitorial work when the woman where she was applying asked what her last job had been. MARILYN often drank coffee out of a large brown ceramic mug. MARILYN wrote songs and attended meetings of a writers' club. At one of the meetings of the writers' club, MARILYN reclined very comfortably on the floor and read some poems and songs she had written to the group. She leaned back against the couch, still seated in the floor, and said that having friends was one of the most important things in a person's life. She said that without friends, where were you? MARILYN walked home from a bar late at night one evening in Paris and was stopped by a police car. The officer told her that a woman didn't need to be walking by herself late at night, so he gave her a lift home. MARILYN from time to time would have a drink, although she was not supposed to do so while taking lithium. MARILYN rode to the Writers Club one evening in the car with a former Dallas police officer. He knew and remembered many of the people that MARILYN had known and remembered from when she worked as a Dallas police dispatcher. The two of them discussed the people that they had known in common. MARILYN enjoyed games and from time to time played the Ungame, Trivial Pursuit, and Risk. MARILYN would lapse into states of depression from time to time. On one occasion, a friend called her and said, "Hi, sweetheart, how are you?" To which MARILYN replied, "Not worth a fuck." She then hung up the telephone angrily and abruptly. I first met MARILYN in early 1985 when she began coming into my bookstore and purchasing self-help books on beauty, cosmetics, exercise, etc. MARILYN was redheaded, in her early 40s, and very lovely. She was living in a halfway house after being released from Terrell State Mental Hospital. Her room was upstairs, and she remarked that she often liked to put mayonnaise in her hair and finger paint whenever she was alone. She did not care for the other ladies living in the house with her. MARILYN was divorced. She and I went out to dinner together at a steakhouse one evening, and she asked for tapioca pudding, which the young kids working there were not familiar with. MARILYN and I played war board games sometimes. We went to my bookstore in Dallas together, where she telephoned her teenage son, who was living with her ex-husband, his father. At the time, her son was considering joining the Army. He committed suicide instead less than a year later. MARILYN was manic-depressive and took lithium. She and I ate at a Mexican restaurant, Pancho's, there in Dallas. MARILYN had lived and worked in Dallas for nearly 20 years. usually as a top-notch legal secretary for various attorneys. At one point, she worked as a dispatcher for the Dallas Police Department. She had counseled a boy on the telephone who called in announcing that he was about to commit suicide. She tried to keep him talking and hold him on the phone long enough for them to trace the call. But he ultimately fired the gun and she heard his body fall with a thud. The telephone receiver fell to the floor with him. So the line remained open, and indeed the police and ambulance got there quickly. The boy had shot himself in the head and only lived a few hours after he was rushed to the hospital. This incident had an emotional and long-lasting impact upon Marilyn and haunted Marilyn. Marilyn recalled also the number of people researching the Kennedy assassination came into the police station and asked questions and got Xeroxes of publicly available files. During a sporadic period of unemployment, Marilyn, out of sheer desperation for food and shelter, went into the Josky store in downtown Dallas and began picking up items, earrings, jewelry, etc., and stuffing them into her purse. Without realizing it, she crossed the misdemeanor shoplifting line over into the felony because of the total amount of the merchandise, as she was soon to learn when a female security guard stopped her at an exit saying, "Okay, come on, sweetheart," and proceeded to lead her to an inner office where she was detained while the items were totaled and the Dallas police were summoned. Once in the county jail, a large black woman was placed in the cell with Marilyn, and she began taking Marilyn's food. A number of women coming down from drugs would scream and shout all night long, keeping Marilyn awake. A television was kept blaring at full volume a lot of the time. After several months, Marilyn was sentenced by a judge to commitment in Terrell, where it was discovered that she was anemic and suffering malnutrition. Her urine was green-colored. She was given megadoses of vitamins and hefty meals. Marilyn's life ended in a car wreck in an automobile she had purchased after getting a job in Terrell following her final release from the mental hospital in the summer of 1986. During the last weeks just prior to her death, Marilyn worked as a receptionist at Terrell State Mental Hospital and gave tokens out to patients for cigarettes, cokes, etc. Rosanna, a woman who knew Marilyn closely, felt that Marilyn's car wreck was not an accident, but was deliberate. She felt that Marilyn was so deeply depressed from her son's suicide that she deliberately rammed her car into the bridge on the highway from Terrell to Dallas, thus committing suicide herself. The wreck occurred on an off-road from Terrell to I-30, the highway from Dallas to Shreveport. Marilyn was wearing a raincoat and nothing else. She was nude underneath the raincoat. Marilyn had been heard to remark that she was going to be with her son, and that she was going to join her son. Marilyn was working in admissions there at Terrell State Hospital in the weeks prior to her death.